phenomenal book, Kris. And I would love for you to share with us how you even started to look at win the hour, win the day.
Oh my gosh, I'm good to go now after you said it was a phenomenal book. I'm done here. Flattery will get you everywhere with me. Okay, so you're right. Listen, backing up a bit, when I started my business, oh my gosh, like I worked insane hours those first couple of years. And my husband said I was always stealing from sleep. I would get up early and earlier and stay later and later. And I was told about the 2-year mark that I was starting to lose some of my charm. So I was like, well, this can't be, because he was just so supportive of everything I did. And I thought, I can't be running around, barking at people because they're going too slow, which I always thought they were going too slow. It wasn't that I was going too fast. Fine. So I literally went from working 16 hours a day down to 6. This did not happen overnight. This is a story on its own. But as you shared, luckily I did, because it was a couple of years after that my husband was diagnosed with colon cancer, and I was pulled away from the business for about 2 years. Now, we were very positive in how we navigated his journey. Nobody knew what was going on. When I returned after his passing, my existing clients had no idea. The local business community did not know. And so then they started to say, like, how could we have not known? How could you have accomplished that? And if you could do that, perhaps you could help me get to my kids' soccer games. And so then I started to realize that the people that needed me most were the ones that were in business, for a while, 5+ years, and they were just working too many hours for where they were at this point in their journey. And so that's how one thing led to another. And I thought, I've got to reach them. And I wrote the book, and then we started the Winner's Circle, and it all kind of snowballed from there.
That's a lot. And I'm sitting here thinking, when you said, trying to pack everything in the day, I'm like, oh, I have that tendency. I've been working on that one for a while myself.
Yeah.
So you're preaching to the choir. And I'm sure there's many listeners and viewers of the podcast who have had similar experiences. When it comes to being successful, I know you mentioned that there's a difference in 2 different types of people. There's the strugglers and there's the successful people. And they do things very differently. I would love for you to share a little bit about those 2 individuals and how you spot them.
Yeah. So, it's so interesting. I wanted the book to be something where you self-diagnose. And thank you so much for your compliments about the book, because I did work really hard on that. I wanted it to be engaging, interesting, and easy read. And I'm all about big results, no fluff. So if I want you to read the book and be able to do something right away. And so what I did is I divided everything into, are you a struggler or a successful person, right? And so a struggler often believes, listen, and I did this for years too, like, you don't understand, I can't afford help, no one will do it the way I want to do it. And I really started to notice this kind of behavior when we had co-op students come through, and it's amazing. And you get them for like a couple 100 hours, and they get an opportunity to learn from you. And it's just a really win-win situation. And, for me, it was, oh, this is amazing. And we really put systems in play. And so that, one student would train the next. It was awesome. But I would go around, and I think I had the secret, I'd want to share it with other entrepreneurs. Like, the schools will give you these students, and they're very tech savvy, and they've so much to offer, and it's free. And they'd be like, well, it's too much work to train them. It's to this. But a successful person would say, you know what you can do? Like, this is how you can expedite. So never mind even the systems and processes, train them up front, have them train the next part. Like, they would improve that. So they're looking at leveraging it versus the obstacles. So that comes up a lot, whether are you a struggler or a successful person. And by the way, I want to really emphasize, this is not about how much money you make, because you can be a struggler and make money. It's really about the freedom of choice and how easily you navigate through the day. And ultimately, what I'm always about is that your business should support your life instead of consume it. And you should always have the bandwidth to be able to take on more to get to that next thing. Because that's what being an entrepreneur is about, is getting your ideas into action, not just repeating the same admin work, right?
And what I find is that the struggler is somewhat of that fixed mindset we hear about Carol Dweck talk about, right? And the successful person is more expansive, more in the growth mindset.
Yeah, it's easy to get locked into that, though. I feel I'm going to defend you strugglers, because listen, I know for me, for years, I mean, what we really focus on Win the Hour, Win the Day, we focus on team, time, and toolkits. All right. And so, first of all, let me give you a quick overview. It's really not about needing more time. It's about having more energy. And so that you feel you should be able to start your workday refreshed and leave fresh. And you should be as functional and purposeful at 3 o'clock in the afternoon as you were at 9, where instead of that depleting, dragging your tired self through the day, grinding it out. And then the team, I know I was a sufferpreneur for years, thinking that once I got to a certain plateau of success, I could afford help, almost like climbing a mountain. When I got to the top, then I could get help, but I would never get to the top of that mountain without help. That's just that, right? And especially in this magical age of outsourcing, it's just so insanely affordable. And then the third one is the toolkits. We call them our super toolkits. So many people hear systems and processes, and those traditionally are written by the end user, static in nature. They're there to cover liability. And so then you think, oh no, I have it all in my head and this is my business and that's going to restrict me. When in fact, it's going to really get stuff off your desk so that you have the bandwidth for creativity.
So how do you get people started in really shifting their time, their calendars?
Well, that's a fantastic question, Debra. So when you're working with us in the Winner Circle, a couple of things happen. We do start off with your calendar because most people fundamentally just use the calendar wrong. I'd say 90% of people use the calendar wrong. They're living off a to-do list, which is, oh my gosh, to-do lists are fantastic if you're looking to add stress to your life, get incomplete tasks, make mistakes, repeat the work. Then you really want to stick with the to-do list, right? But what you really want to do is be using your calendar as a time bank account. And so many people have external forces on their calendar, but nothing else. And to me, it's like thinking, they might say, well, Kris, I do that every day. I don't need to put that on my calendar. Well, it's not a memo board, but that's like me saying to you, Debra, yeah, so your car payment comes out every month. And you say, yeah, but don't worry about it. I know it comes out every month, so I don't count it. Well, the money's gone, right? So then if it's not on your calendar and you're not recording, and I don't mean, listen, we're talking hours, we're not talking a lot of work, but so many people fall into their workday thinking they have 8 hours when in fact they only have 5 because half the work isn't on the calendar. Then don't even get me started, Debra. If you have one day where you have a cold or you're not feeling so well, and then you don't even know you remember 2 weeks later, I was going to do it that day, but I wasn't feeling well because you can't move your assets around effectively on the calendar because nothing's there. So we start with the calendar and then we move into some really basic things. And usually really quickly, we get them some help through outsourcing. And that's a whole thing on its own because it's so crazy affordable. And there's many options out there. But the problem with a lot of them is they're very expensive. You're tied into contracts. But the biggest thing, and hear me if you hear nothing else I say, the biggest thing is you can find amazing talent. But if you bring them on, adding more people to chaos only adds chaos, right? And so you may have an amazing person that you found and they were very affordable, but they're not going to stay with you because they will see the writing on the wall that you're always running around like your hair's on fire. And at some point you're going to turn on them. They're like, okay, this is stressful. It's not fun. Tasks are incomplete. Every time you give them instructions, oh, I forgot the password. Oh, never mind that. We don't do that on Tuesdays. So that's a big thing. We start with a calendar and then we really get them some help. And we do all the interviewing and we find a hire and onboard them. And then we introduce them. They get the final say, the clients. And then we move effectively, making sure they're strategically set up with super toolkits so that it adds relief, not stress.
Right. So where do you start looking for some of those support systems?
So there's a whole bunch of places you can look, and it really just depends on what is it we need? Do we need a VA? Do we need a social media person? There's platforms throughout, that have been around for quite some time. More and more, what I would caution you is there's a lot of outsourcing agencies pop up, and a lot of our clients have come to us rather discouraged by that and then thinking, well, it didn't work for me and I can't do this again. Mm-hmm. Because if you work with an outsourcing agency, what happens is you sign a contract, you might be there for 3 months. They charge you usually $8-10 an hour. And the sad thing is the outsourcer only gets like 4 because that's their profit margin and they want to, they want to have a business there. And so also if you leave that agency, you don't get to take the outsourcer with you, right? And then again, what happens is that outsourcer, people have this misunderstanding that they're going to come with systems. Well, they can't parent up. They can't come into your business and say, Debra, I have spoken to you twice about not having the passwords available. And if I have to speak to you a third time, like they can't do that. So then they come in and you're, again, not set up effectively. Whereas when we work with our clients in the winner's circle, we not only work with them in our coaching calls, but we also have what we call win team coaching for the outsourcers, teaching them leadership, how to speak their voice, how to get ideas, how to express all the brilliance that they have, not just be task takers. They also have a learning center where we provide tutorials, and we have a Discord community. So we're working the entrepreneur and the outsourcer, and it's given us not only a 90% retention rate, but it's given people are very generous with me, and they'll say things like, Kris, you saved my life. You know, I just didn't know how stressed out I was all the time. My business is fun again. And it's giving these outsourcers, frankly, the best jobs they've ever had in their life, because they're not dealing with these crazy entrepreneurs. They're dealing with people that it gets easier and easier. So there's a lot of different platforms, but be mindful of that, because even Upwork, what they do is, I had an outsourcer VA for 7 years through them, but it was 10% off the top all the time. And that really adds up, right? So so that we could do a 6-part Netflix series on the different platforms out there. But what I'll tell you is be mindful. And we do that for our clients. We just pay for different services and bring them to our clients, but there's a lot to choose from.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of hidden costs.
Right. And what's the best way? Like, do you have a certain questions that you would have prepared when you approach these companies?
Yeah. So we have what we call the PASS formula. So it's about personality, action, success, and strengths. And these are some of the things that we ask them. But I'll tell you, we have a 12-point process. And so what I do, I see these tutorials online. I looked one day on YouTube, and many of them are telling you how, you know, take hours and hours and comb through these resumes. Oh my gosh, we don't do that. And we not only will we find, hire, and board for you, our clients, but we'll train you on what we did it, so that 3 years from now, if you're not with us, you'll know how to do it. So one of the things I do right off the bat is we put a very generic posting out about looking for a VA. We're a growing company. We're doing this, we're doing that, what have you. Back in the day when I first started doing this, like at least 12 years ago, my job description was so detailed that like a leader of a large company somewhere in the world could not, like, it was just too specific, right? So it's very general. Then when people apply to us, oh, here's a little ninja trick. We will say something like, put sunshine in the subject letter. So we'll just scroll through really quickly. And if we don't see some sunshine in the subject letter, subject line, we just don't open it, right? Because they didn't read it properly. We're looking for someone with eye for detail. So that eliminates a lot. Then we look at the cover letter. We're looking for people who communicate effectively and simplistic, like in a simple way, right? So I'll tell you, 99% of the time, I don't even look at their resume. It's how they communicate to me on that cover letter. So then we invite them to an interview, and I will do batch interviews where I might have 20 people in a Zoom meeting, and they will be warned ahead of time. We're interviewing a bunch of people. You may be waiting up to 20 minutes. And what I will do is I will hop on. Now, you might be sorry you asked me this, Debra, because I'm giving you all my goods. I will hop on and I will say to them, because I think this is really important. And I will say, Debra, this is a quick interview to see if you're ready to make it to the main interview. Debra, can you tell me why you think you'd be a good fit for this job? Now, I have said your name twice.
Yes.
And you'd be surprised how many times people say, well, first I want to introduce myself. My name is Debra. I'm like, okay, you're not listening. You're out, right? Yeah. And then if they just say generic things like, I care about people and I want to help, whatever. But it tells me when they show up how professional their background is. If they have a virtual background, are they dressed for an interview? Their personality shines. Oh, Kris, I'm excited to be here. I've been researching you. What my background is I'm really good at la, 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 la. So are they awake? Are they interested? Are they saying words with substance? Or are they just smiling, you know, at whatever? And so then if they do well, I will say to them, I'm giving you an email. It's different than the email address you have. Please follow up to me and say, Kris, you told me to reach out to you. So what I'm doing is I'm giving them another little micro test. So I put them through these processes. So by the time that they get to my client and I'm ready to do an intro, they've been through 12 tests that are ever so small and slight, but show me that they listen And then they actually get a little mini 10-minute, 15-minute test that we send them a video to do, right? So it's really very simple, but it does weed out a lot of people.